Hi everyone.
Hello, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
Yes, I'm well, thanks. Isha, are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I'm Isha, if you don't know, and I'm 18 years old. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm helping host the Hustings today alongside Mira. Would you like to introduce yourself, Mira?
Hi, I'm Mira. My pronouns are she, her. I'm 17 years old and I'm from Trafford.
Hi, Mira.
So I'll be hosting alongside Mira tonight. Just some housekeeping rules. We wanted to remind everyone that this is a safe space where we welcome a range of views. As a group, we don't welcome anything hateful or discriminatory. And just a reminder, if this does occur, then we have to pause the meeting and you may be removed. So tonight for the hustings, we're welcoming Andy Burnham to represent the Labour Party. The young people on this Zoom represent young people and youth organisations from all across Manchester. We have 7 topics that we're going to talk about tonight, and they're all coming from young people, and they've all been chosen by young people, and they're all connected to your potential role as the next great mayor of Greater Manchester. So to keep us on track, Mira will be making sure that there's a maximum of 5 minutes per topic. Our reason for being strict is to give all the candidates the same amount of time to talk for each discussion. We mentioned it in the pre-information, but just to reiterate that tonight's event is being recorded and Rosa will be recording the event. Rosa, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Of course, yeah. So I'm Rosalie. My pronouns are she, her. I'm 19 and I am the roving reporter for today. So I'll just be keeping track of everything you say, writing it all down and making sure if you promise anything, we can hold you to account afterwards.
Using it in evidence against me in court.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Rosa.
Thank you. So are we all ready to start? Yeah. So for the first question, we're going to go to Winnie and it will be on housing.
Winnie's not here, so I'm doing it. Hi, I'm Georgia. I'm 18. My pronouns are she, her. And the first question is, there's a lot of homelessness in Greater Manchester. This is clearly an important issue. What is your short-term and long-term strategy to prevent homelessness and tackle it?
Thanks, Georgia. So I should introduce myself first, shouldn't I? So I am Andy Burnham, the current mayor of Greater Manchester, but obviously standing for re-election. My pronouns are he, him. Homelessness was the big priority, my personal priority, over the last 4 years. You know, I said at the first mayoral election that I would turn the situation around. We had a rising crisis of homelessness back in 2017, and we still do. I'm not saying for a second that we've solved it, because it's obviously a big challenge. So let me separate the two things. The short-term response, if you like, the emergency response that we've made, or I've made, is something called a bed every night. So this was a scheme that I created with our 10 councils, and we work with our community and voluntary providers across Greater Manchester, and I fund every single night about 520 places currently. So the aim is to give everybody sleeping rough somewhere to go, and it's really worked in that it's reduced rough sleeping. There were 300 people sleeping rough in 2017. It's down, it varies because it does change, you know, from 1 month to another, but it's about 100 or a bit below 100, 70 on the last count at the moment. So a bed every night has been independently evaluated by Heriot-Watt University as having achieved a big, as having been the reason why we've reduced rough sleeping by so much. And they've also said that we've gone faster than other parts of the country in reducing it because of that. But then let me just finish on the second part of your question, Georgia. That's an emergency response, a short-term response, and we do need a more comprehensive response. So we are currently developing a Greater Manchester homelessness prevention strategy, which looks at the kind of much bigger, broader issues as to why people become homeless, and what more is needed to be done to more than just give people a short-term solution, but actually give people a home. So we will be bringing that forward in early May, and it will go from building more homes for social rent, taking over the running of some homes within the private rented sector, expanding our successful Housing First scheme, where we give people a home and support. And it also touches on things like young people who've been in care, because that's a big part of the homeless population. You know, young people who can't fall back on parents. We need to do much more, I think, to prevent youth homelessness. So we have a particular pilot running at the moment on youth homelessness prevention, very much focused on young people who've been in care. And that will be a big part of our overall strategy coming forward. So thank you for your question. We are acting both short-term and long-term, and we are beginning to achieve results, but we're not where we want to be yet.
Okay. The second question is, if you're elected, can you commit to using empty homes in Greater Manchester to house the homeless? And how will you implement support services to complement this?
Yes is the answer to that. So we've set up something called an ethical lettings agency. So our housing providers have set up a new organisation called Let Us, i.e. let us rent out your property. So properties that are empty, that are private rented, we are working with landlords to bring them under the control of Let Us, which is our agency that's run by our current housing providers. And we're trying to run that on a housing first model, which is house plus support, as you're saying. So these are empty homes that we're trying to bring under the control of Let Us. And by doing that, expand housing first. But the key bit here is, just to finish on this point, is what we're trying to do through doing that is then give a route for people who are in a bed every night. Because one of the problems with the bed every night is people can become stuck there and they can't move on to the next level. So we're trying to knit all of these things together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got a big objective to increase the number of properties under the control of Let Us. It's currently about 200, but we want a lot more. So that is about identifying private rented properties that are empty, providing funding to renovate them, and then bring them into the social rented stock, basically.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your response. Next, we have the category of unhealthy lifestyles and food poverty, and Mira will be asking the next question.
So Andy, holiday hunger has been a huge topical issue due to the pandemic. Food banks have been a stigma for young people. And how do you plan on tackling holiday hunger, and how would you reduce that stigma in the future?
So I've started to do it, Mira, but it's early days and I'm not yet where I want to be with it. But I've launched a scheme called No Child Goes Hungry. And what we are doing through that is raising funds at the GM level to provide support that's additional to what our councils can provide, because our councils are doing things at our holiday food clubs. But this scheme is meant to just add to what the councils are doing. So to give you an example, we've signed a deal with the co-op where we have cards that pay for a meal deal. So, you know, for a young person who doesn't want to go to a club somewhere, you know, just it's a better option for them. So over the Christmas holiday period, I think we gave out 1,000 cards per district. So I think it was 10,000 overall. And that's a partnership that the Greater Manchester Mayor's charity is running with the co-op. And some of the funding was given to community groups as well. I've said to Marcus Rashford that I want him to be more proud of Greater Manchester than anywhere else in the country, because he needs to be able to point to his home area doing everything that he's calling for. And I'm really, really determined to demonstrate that. So No Child Goes Hungry will be in my manifesto. I want to expand it pretty significantly. And we want it to be a permanent, in the way that a bed every night is our permanent homelessness scheme. No Child Goes Hungry will be our permanent, holiday hunger scheme. And where I want it to go to, just to finish off, is, imagine this: if you had cafes and shops and restaurants that had that sticker in their window, "No Child Goes Hungry," what it would say, in any child could walk in and get a subsidised or free meal. And so I want to build out a network of food outlets who will join us and take the stigma away of someone having a card, or having to go to a club of some kind. That's the dream, but we're not there yet. But that's where I want to get it to.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Neil. The next question is from Jess.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm 14. My pronouns are she and her, and my question is that unhealthy lifestyles are largely due to cost. Young people don't have access to healthy food, transport, or club membership because of the cost, and the less healthy the lifestyle, the bigger the cost to the NHS. As Mayor, how would you increase accessibility to healthy lifestyles?
Oh, it's a really, really crucial question. I think young people's sport is massively important. I kind of huge believer that we need to do more to make sport more available, reduce the cost of it for young people. Young people's travel, I mean, we may come on to this, but you may know that at the last election, mayoral election, I promised to introduce free bus travel for 16 to 18-year-olds in Greater Manchester. So that didn't exist before I became mayor. Now, I know you're at an age where you're not quite ready to take advantage of that yet. But if I'm re-elected, I will be keeping the R-Pass. And that will be there then for every, because I think it's that age at 16 to 18 where people really face barriers when it comes to financial support. And they may make choices in terms of where they go to study, which college they go to based on money rather than what they want to do in their life. So the R-Pass is massively important to me. And the key with the R-Pass is it's the free bus travel, but it's also free opportunities that come with it. And that the opportunity side of it, I'm not sure we ever communicated well enough, and we need to sort of have another go at that. It's about free entry to places, to gyms. We had our leisure centres offer free entry to R-Pass holders, and I want to look at that again, see if we can expand that offer. I think we need to do better when it comes to support for after school activity, and that's something that I'm interested in pushing as well. It's a big issue for me. I want all of you to have all of the opportunities that Greater Manchester offers, and the R-Pass is my kind of way I'm trying to deliver that. And so I'm committing now that it would be, if I'm re-elected, the R-Pass will be in place for the whole period that I'm re-elected, and that will in the end reach you because you'll be 16 by the time that before the next mayoral election comes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Jess. The next category is access to work and training, and the person asking the question will be Leanne.
Hi, my name's Leanne. And so as a young person, I find it challenging to find access to jobs and training for the future. So can you tell us how you're going to make sure young people have access to information about training?
Thanks, Leanne. So again, back to when I first stood to be mayor, I said I would create something called, which I call the UCAS style system for apprenticeships. And the idea behind that was, for young people who are on the university route, the UCAS system gives people really clear information about what courses there are, what grades you need to get, all the different universities. I think it's always been the case that young people who want work-related opportunity don't get the same clarity of information in terms of what might be available, and therefore don't know necessarily what courses to take beyond school to help them move towards a good work-related opportunity. So I have created that system now. It's called GMAX, the Greater Manchester Apprenticeships and Careers Service. It's only about a year old, a bit over than a year old. And working with Diane Madal, who led the youth task force that I created, we've been refreshing it recently and improving it. But GMAX is my answer to your question. It's meant to be a single portal for young people to go. And it's not just actually for apprenticeships or jobs. I'm very, very kind of committed to giving people work shadowing opportunity. So I think from your perspective, where you are, you might want to be the mayor of Greater Manchester, or you might want to be, somebody senior in law or finance. We've got amazing jobs in the city now that weren't there when I was your age growing up here. We've got some amazing organizations, and we've got to open up those places to you now so you can kind of see those worlds and get a feel for those worlds. And it's why I'm asking people who are in senior positions across Greater Manchester to offer work shadowing via the GMAX system, so that if you're interested in, let's say, finding out more about the media or working in law, that there is somebody who's a prominent lawyer in the city who will say, look, I offer 4 work shadowing days a year, and you could apply for one of those days. That's how I want GMAX to develop, so that you don't need. I didn't have connected parents in politics when I was growing up, because my mum and dad weren't politicians or councillors or anything like that. I was the strange one in the family that was interested in politics. No one else was interested in it. But I didn't know how to open a door into politics. How would I know? I didn't have anyone. And I think in life, where life is unfair, is people with connected parents often get the best opportunities coming out of school and college and university, because they just got those doors opened for them. I want people without connections to have the ability to access those worlds that you could absolutely get into if somebody just opened the door for you. So I'm determined to do that. We call it Meet Your Future. So it's a work shadowing scheme for Greater Manchester. And I want to increase the number of people who are offering those days of work shadowing, so that you all on this call can say, right, that's my way into that world that I want to be a part of, for my career. So GMAX is my answer to your question, Leanne. And I saw a figure recently when we did a survey of year 10s in Greater Manchester.
Andy, I'm so sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, sorry, Mira.
Got a few more questions.
No, it's all right. You do that.
Just want to make sure that we get them all.
No
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now on to Bethan for her question.
Bethan's always interrupting me, so she's well used to doing that.
Oh yes, definitely. You know me quite well now, don't you? So I'm still at college, even though I'm 19, and a lot of people in my class are using Our Pass, but there's some who aren't using it as well. It's either that they're not eligible because they've repeated a year, such as me. I'm not eligible anymore. COVID means that there's a lot more young people in this situation, like I am. This puts them at a, sorry.
Have we lost Bethan?
I think Garrett said she just left.
Okay, great. I'll just finish off the question. I've got it in front of me. So COVID means that there will be a lot more young people in this situation, and it puts them at a disadvantage, and they have to limit their transport. How would you expand the Our Pass scheme so it's accessible to more young people?
Yeah, okay. It's hard because I'm finding it hard to fund 16 to 18 because it costs £15 million a year. So nice to see you back, Beth. And I was just saying that.
Sorry about that. My nanny called me just as my question came up. So it's always good time.
You can always trust your nan to.
Did someone finish it, or would you like me to finish what I was saying?
I did get that. Yeah. You could ask if you want to.
Sorry. So I was up to. This puts them at a disadvantage, and they have to limit their transport. How could you expand the Our Pass scheme so it's accessible for more young people? Sorry.
It's all right. So it's a good question. I was just saying that it's a struggle to fund 16 to 18, if I'm honest with you, because I didn't have a budget for that when I came in, and I had to create one, and it costs £15 million a year. And the more that you all use it, the more it costs me, because I have to reimburse the bus companies. Now, we're going to do something about the bus companies, by the way. We're going to change the way buses work, and that might help a little bit. But the answer is, in the first instance, I've just got to protect it for 16 to 18-year-olds. However, there's 2 things extra I can say. One, I said before that we've got to recognise that young people who've been in care, who don't have parents to fall back on, need to be our first priority, I think. So I've extended access to the Our Pass for young people who've been in care to the age of 21. So they can now access that, and a few thousand have done that already, and that's important. And then secondly, if we can't give you access to the bus travel side of Our Pass, can we continue to give you access to the opportunity side of Our Pass, even if you're 19, 20? And we've done that through this first year, but I think when things reopen, that will mean more to people. So I think we're going to try and keep the opportunities offer open, hopefully up until people are 21, and that might just give you a little bit of help, rather than, obviously being able to fund the whole thing. But I would love it, Bethan, if I could make the Our Pass, and tram and everything. it's just what I can afford. And I've got to be honest with you, in an election, you don't want politicians to say, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that to try and get votes, and then they don't do it. So the RPAS is hard enough to fund, if I'm honest with you, but I am committing to keep it because I'm really proud of it, to be honest.
Amazing. As a follow-up question, how are you going to support young people if they can't even get around the city? So like the young people who can't access our pass, is there any other schemes or ideas you've got that will support young people?
We're bringing through a bike hire scheme later this year. So that will hit the ground later in 2021. And we are looking at how we can incentivize young people to use it. So that's one thing that I'm looking at. Obviously, tram is half price, but that is something I control a bit more and can potentially go further on it. So, again, I'm looking at tram. Overall, we are, as I was saying before, looking to reform the public transport system in Greater Manchester, bringing the buses under public control. They currently operate as a commercial system. And when we bring them under public control, we'll be able to offer young people bus and tram journeys for much lower cost. So, integrating journeys in a different, so you can get much more around the city region more quickly in a more integrated system of the kind you see in London. So I'm really conscious that we need to do more to help people move around the city region. I mean, the last answer is we are building the B network, which is the segregated cycling and walking provision. And obviously, when you make cycling safer by segregating it from the road, I think that opens up bike travel to young people who may not otherwise want to do it.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Bethan.
Thank you, Bethan, for your question. The next topic is domestic abuse, and Adila will be asking the next question.
Hi, I'm Adila. I'm 17 and my pronouns are she, her. And my question is, due to COVID, there has been an increase in hate crimes towards minority communities, in particular the Asian community. This leaves victims in these communities isolated and makes it harder for them to access help. What will you do to combat this and ensure that people from these communities get the help that they deserve? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Adila. Really important question. So we are really clear that we have a zero tolerance approach to hate crime of any kind. And I think this is one area where we can say, Greater Manchester Police do follow through on that. We take any hate crime with the absolute seriousness. There is an issue, though, of course, in terms of confidence amongst people within those communities who may not feel they can come forward. So I think there's more to be done to support people and to give people confidence to come forward. We've recently published a gender-based abuse strategy, which I would encourage you to have a look at because it's out for consultation at the moment. That is about working with women's groups, groups who represent women from minority communities who perhaps who don't feel empowered to come forward. We are looking at what more we can do to empower them to be able to report hate crime where that's happening. So it's a big theme for us at the moment. And I just think on the question of domestic abuse or violence against women and girls more broadly, I just want to say this. I recognise that the people who can do most to improve women's safety are men and boys. There's just no getting away from that. It's a fact. And we mustn't shy away from saying that or indeed having that conversation. So I have said as part of this that if re-elected, I will lead personally a high-profile campaign targeted at men and boys across Greater Manchester to say, think about how your behaviour might make somebody feel, because sometimes maybe we don't think enough about how our behaviour might make someone else feel. And I think that's really a conversation that needs to be had, because I know what the truth of what you're saying. It's the case that in some parts of our city region, women, but particularly women from different minority backgrounds, will not feel safe, and we need to do something about that.
Thank you so much.
No, thanks to you.
Thank you, Adila. And the next question is from Amor.
Hello, I'm 18 and my name is Amor. My pronouns are she, her, and the question I'm asking today is, what are you going to do to help strengthen the investigation of emotional/psychological abuse, as it isn't easy to detect or very visible?
Yeah, is that what people might also call coercive control, Amor? Is that where people are in a relationship and they are showing controlling, intimidating behaviour? Yeah. It's a massive issue. And let me be honest here, Greater Manchester Police hasn't been approaching this properly. We had the report last year where it was identified as being weak on the reporting of these kind of crimes. I mean, they are more complex, of course, and it does go back to what I was saying to Adila about people having the confidence to come forward. But if there's a perception that the police aren't recording those crimes properly when they are reported, then obviously that isn't going to encourage people to come forward. So we have a huge amount of work going on this at the moment. And you may have seen that last week I appointed a new chief constable for Greater Manchester. And he, in his opening press briefing, said that under his watch, every single crime would be not just recorded, but investigated. And it's an important message, I think, for the public of Greater Manchester to hear. And then separate to that, we have our gender-based abuse strategy, which I just mentioned to Adila, which deals with the kind of behaviour that you're discussing. And the point about, just lastly, the point about that type of crime is that it may not be the police that are the first people to find out about it. It could be via a school, a community group. It could be via the council, because it could be a different worker who's been made aware of that. So what we need to get to is trusted people within communities who might be able to report those crimes rather than the individual themselves. And these are things that we're looking at as well. So really important question. Thank you for it.
Thank you, Amor, and thank you, Andy, for your response. The next category is young people being heard in local decision making. And the first statement and question are from Madison and Hannah.
Is Madison here?
Yeah, I was going to say we'll now be moving on to young people being heard in local decision making.
Amazing. Hiya, Andy. I hope you're all right. So our question we've got to start off. Amazing. Our first question we've got to start off this category is that it's a really rare opportunity for us to be able to communicate and ask questions in this fashion to people of your power. And what action are you going to commit to taking to ensure that young people can communicate more often with people in your power, maybe below your power, and then also with your power?
Thank you, Hannah. Really important question. So I've been doing the politician thing on here tonight, claiming credit for the R-Pass and aren't I brilliant, and I introduced it and all of that. The truth of the matter is, it was somebody from Reclaim called Olivia Clark who put forward the idea of the R-Pass to me at the last mayoral election.
One of my close friends, funnily enough.
Well, there you go, you see. So you ask her, she may say otherwise, but I hope she would say that, she influenced things and changed things for the better. And I did and do put a lot of emphasis on listening to young people. So before Mira cut me off before when I was in the middle of my, I want to joke about. I was going to talk about the survey that we've done of year 10s, because there's one thing, it's right to have this kind of conversation and respond to what people say. But I've also got to kind of make sure that we're hearing the wider voices of young people. So I've instituted a life readiness survey. I don't know if any of you have ever taken it. It's a year 10 survey, and it asks a whole range of questions. And I was just going to touch on one of the findings that came back from that, which was that 4 in 10 year 10s are aware of GMAX, which is an amazing statistic. But another thing that came out of that was that 6 in 10 were aware of Couth, which is a new online mental health service that we've pioneered, or we pushed quite a lot during the pandemic. And the thing is about that survey, I use things like that to tell me, well, that survey is telling me something in my role, and that is young people are calling out for more emphasis on mental health, but also mental health delivered in a different way, which is more accessible and easier and instant. So I do both of these things, and I take them both very seriously. I've established the Youth Combined Authority, and obviously some of you are on it. Bethan is on it, and we have listened to it. And the Youth Combined Authority actually brought through the RPAS in terms of its actual implementation. I've had a couple of care leavers roundtables. So the thing I was talking before about extending RPAS came from a discussion with care leavers, young people themselves who've been in care. So there's that. I do speak directly to young people in terms of their voice in decision making, but I also have that wider survey of year 10s, which I think is also important to inform our decision making. So
thank you very much.
Thank you for the question, Hannah. And now we'll move on to Ben for his question.
In your first 2 months, when if you're re-elected, how would you communicate with young people moving forward?
Thanks, Ben. You said when I'm re-elected. I like the confidence there, but I need to tap into it. I get nervous in elections. I'm not a very good election candidate because I always think, oh God, maybe I'm going to get. So anyway, thank you. I'm going to build what we're doing. I think we are involving young people centrally in the work of devolution in Greater Manchester. So the Youth Combined Authority was the first specific panel I set up, and so obviously I'm committing to the continuation of that. I think we need to build out that survey, that wider survey, the life readiness survey. So we've just signed a deal with the University of Manchester, and they're turning it into a young people's well-being survey, and it's going to go to further age groups now. So that's something I'm really, really committed to as well. I mean, I'm open to further ideas, though. I put a lot of emphasis on this. The reason why I put emphasis on it, I was an MP for 16 years. Some of you might remember that. And what I remember about that Westminster world is young people are often made the target for cuts. You know, whenever there's difficult things going on, it's young people's stuff that gets cut. And I said the point of devolution in Greater Manchester is to do things differently and not do the wrong things that Westminster has often done. And I said I would make young people a priority for investment. And I'm absolutely sticking by that. And before Christmas, I should say, Diane Madal, as I was saying before, did a big piece of work for us on the Young People's Task Force. And that listened to the voices of young people. She had a huge number of young people involved in that work. It talked about young people being connected, both with transport and digitally. It talked about young people being supported with mental health support services of the kind I've talked about tonight. Young people having the basics, food, and all of those things.
Andy, I'm really sorry to do this again. We've got another few questions on this topic. So yeah, I think if we've got Jacob next.
Hi, Andy.
Hi, Jacob.
I'd just like to ask, you've said in the past how important it is to listen to young people and the youth voice. So why didn't you consult young people before announcing plans to put police officers in schools when so many young people have concerns about the initiative?
Well, thanks, Jacob. I realise people do have concerns about it, but consultation is baked into the plans, if I could put it that way. So school-based police officers are not a new policy. They've been around a long time. I think Wright Robinson still have one that goes back to a long time ago, actually. And when I was MP for Lee, we had them in Fred Longworth High School and Wesley High School. So they're a long-standing policy, and we've faced a call in recent times for them to be expanded. So schools were coming to us, head teachers were coming to us saying they wanted them to be expanded. So the policy was already pre-existing, so I couldn't really consult on that because it was already a policy. What we have done, though, Jacob, is bake into the policy consultation if a new school-based officer is to be added to a new school. So we've said that the parents, the students, the community should be consulted before that plan is agreed between the school and GMP. So consultation is baked into that proposal.
Thank you for your question, Jacob. On to Izzy.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I'm 15. I'm from Wigan and my pronouns are she, her. My follow-up question to Jacob's question there is that this plan has caused concern, especially because the reality of police brutality and systemic racism in the police force have become apparent over recent years. How will these schools be decided? How will you justify these decisions? And how can you reassure communities who may be uncomfortable with this plan?
So what I would say is that it's very much for the school to decide. So we don't foist an officer on any school. So it would be for the head teacher to decide, and it then has to have that broader consent of the kind I was talking about before. If you speak to people at Wright Robinson, I think the students there would, from as far as I understand it, would say that they value, because bear in mind, people will have different views of the police from your own experiences, but some young people will find it a reassurance, particularly those who might be at risk of bullying or whatever. So it's kind of different according to people's perceptions of their safety, etc. So that is what I would say. And the issues that you've just identified about the kind of concerns people might have, the point of a school-based police officer is it's meant to build trust at an earlier age. We've got to, build trust in the police, haven't we? Because, at the end of the day, we want to have policing, as we say, by consent, with people's support. And I think sometimes that distrust can be there because the contact isn't there and there isn't that relationship between the police and young people at a community level. And the evidence I had when I was an MP was that school-based police officers build that trust. They build that dialogue and that relationship. And I think it's a policy that's got a lot to recommend it myself. But equally, I could see how some people may see it differently depending on the local context and the views in any particular community. So I am not foisting it on anybody. But if a school is saying they really want one, then obviously it's to be done then with the consent of the school, of the students, the parents, and the wider community. So the idea is to build trust where it may not exist, and that's one of the reasons for the policy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Izzy.
Thank you, Izzy and Andy. The next topic will be mental health, and your first question will be from Lydia.
Hi, Andy. I'm Lydia. I'm 16. My pronouns are she and her. And my question is, as young people, we have a lot of ideas on ways to include mental health in the school, college, and uni curriculum. If you were successful in your position, would you be willing to help us implement mental health into the curriculum and education settings across Greater Manchester? And how would you ensure this was accessible to all?
Oh, absolutely, Lydia. I think it's such an important question. Mental health, I think, is the issue of our times. And I know so many young people are wanting more support, not necessarily to be referred for a service, just everyday support, as I was saying before. We had a pilot on this in the last 4 years called Mentally Healthy Schools. And one of the things that we did was put independent counselling within schools. So not so much on the curriculum, because I can't control the curriculum. That's obviously for the government nationally. What we can do is put support services in schools to provide that extra support outside of the curriculum. So the Mentally Healthy Schools pilot did that, and it was really successful and it was valued. And what we're now just thinking about is, well, how do we take that from a pilot to a broader support scheme? I think mental health, everyday mental health, has got to be part of what we all work hard at, and we all do. And I think at the moment, the support services often aren't there when people need them. So we're very, very committed to that agenda. And the thing I said before about Couth, is something that we would want to, I don't know if any of you on this call find it useful, know about it, but I think we need to build on that and see if we can constantly improve the services, digital services, to support you. So yeah, I'd say all of that. Just to finish, I was saying very quickly about Diane Madal before. I mean, she identified this issue for us as part of the Youth Task Force. I will have a commitment in my manifesto to get all young people online in Greater Manchester. I think if more support is going to be provided digitally, including mental health support, it follows to me that every citizen then therefore has to be supported to access it. And I think we need to ensure that everyone has devices and data on an ongoing basis. So all young people online will be a big part of my manifesto, because the last year has revealed there's about 20,000 young people in Greater Manchester who are not online because they can't afford it.
Thank you.
Hi Andy, my name is Madison. I'm 16 years old and I go to college. I'm in year 12. So a few years ago, statistics told us 1 in 10 young people had diagnosable mental health conditions. This is now 1 in 4, and that is just diagnosed. Despite growing need, mental health support continues to be lacking, and this is the same for young people in Greater Manchester. For this in minority groups, this adds another layer of difficulty, and accessing support becomes an even harder challenge. As Mayor, will you ensure that mental health services are properly funded and accessible for all, and how do you plan to do this?
Thanks, Madison. One of the first things I did as Mayor back in the summer of 2017 was sign off a plan to increase by, I think it was around £60 million at the time, the budget for children, child and adolescent mental health. So that paid for the mentally healthy schools project I was just talking about a moment ago. So there is a commitment there to increase the budget. What I also agreed was that we would publish waiting times for children's mental health services. So believe it or not, nationally they weren't published. And the reason why that's important is because people notice things that are published, because when you can see it, you notice the problem. So if the data is not published, then it just remains hidden, and it is hidden. And that's why children's mental health support has just been often treated as a low priority, because people couldn't really see the problem. But we became the first to do it, and now others have started to follow suit. And I think it's when you then identify the issue that you can then start to get more support into it. But as I said, I think we've got to take it to the whole next level. We've got to change the way we deliver services. We've got to make them more instantly accessible to young people. We shouldn't always be having to refer people for support. It should be people can self-refer and access support immediately. We need to do all of that, as well as improve the statutory children's mental health support services. So, you're absolutely right. It's a critical issue. It's been nowhere near good enough. We've taken some steps in the right direction, but it's got to be a big focus for us going forward.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Madison.
Thank you for your question, Madison. And now for the final topic, but not by any means the least amount of worth, the environment. So we'll be having Seb asking the first question for this topic.
Thank you. What have you done or do you plan to do if you're re-elected as Mayor to halt the current climate crisis regarding emissions, especially greenhouse gases?
Thanks, Seb. The biggest thing that I've done is set a new date for a zero carbon Greater Manchester. So we have a science-based target for a zero carbon city region by 2038. And that's 12 years faster than the UK as a whole. And what I've been doing over the last few years is starting to get every bit of Greater Manchester society to buy into that. So I'll give you an example. Electricity Northwest are the first electricity provider in the country to align themselves with the city region target. So they've committed to me that they will align with 2038, and they're now beginning to make a lot of changes to their grid so that they can meet that. The second thing we're looking at now is what we call a retrofitting program. So we commit to change people's homes across Greater Manchester to make them zero carbon. That means we have to adjust them to put in different insulation or different heating and pump lighting systems. And that is interesting because it can create thousands of good quality jobs for young people across Greater Manchester. And I think this is the key for me, just to say this finally in answer to your question. For a long time, the green agenda has been seen as a sort of cost agenda. You can only do it if you've got money to do it. If you can afford an electric car, or you can afford. We've got to turn it round to a situation where if we solve the climate crisis, we're also solving the jobs crisis, and we're also, creating prosperity and opportunity for people. And I think that's where we've got to take the green agenda in Greater Manchester. I want us to be the UK's leading green city region, and I think we're on the way to being so because of 2038 and all of the work that's happening underneath it.
Thank you. I'll now pass on to Dylan.
Is Dylan on the call?
I'm here, yes. Sorry, I think I didn't hear. I assume Sebastian has said it over to me. I didn't hear that. That's my mistake. So hi, I'm Dylan. I'm in year 10. I'm 15, and my pronouns are he, him. And my question is, given that climate change is a class issue, as over 90% of our carbon emissions are emitted by the richest 1% of people, how shall you address this?
I absolutely agree with you that we have to make the polluter pay. So those that are the most polluting need to face the biggest charges, the biggest taxes. So I'll give you an example. I'm under attack from the Conservative candidate for agreeing with her government that a clean air zone is a good idea. Now, a clean air zone, if we were to introduce it in Greater Manchester, it's not a congestion charge, as she claims it is. What it is if you drive a polluting vehicle around Greater Manchester, you will be charged until you change that vehicle to a non-polluting vehicle. And the effect of this policy will be to particularly go after those bus companies who currently are putting some of their oldest buses on Oxford Road. They're trying to rake in the money, but they're not investing that in putting decent buses on our roads. That will make them pay for the change, which is to clean up our air and clean up. And it is a class issue because the kids in Greater Manchester who breathe in the most polluted air often are from the poorest communities, because often they have the biggest roads going, go through or go near to their community. So it's not an acceptable state of affairs. The only thing is, if it's if it's smaller businesses like taxi drivers or people who drive a van we are going to help them change their vehicle. So we're not going to, make the smaller people who can't afford to change their vehicle, we'll help them. But the bigger players, those who run big HGV companies or big bus companies, absolutely, they should be putting the newest vehicles on the road in Greater Manchester rather than sending all their old bangers to pollute our roads. So that is a good, very relevant example as to how we will put the principle you spoke of into practice. And I would hope the Conservative candidate might support the policy of her own government, but she seems to be using it for political point scoring right now. Sorry, it is a political husting, so I am allowed to say that, aren't I? I hope I am anyway.
Thanks for telling us you're committed. My name's Gulliver. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm in year 11. Could you give us some examples of what you've already done or put in place to tackle the climate crisis?
I'm not building it because it makes me sound like I'm out there with my bricks and my cement every day, but we are building the biggest cycling and walking network in the country called the B Network. 160 million pounds worth, actually more, to be honest. That was the money I put in, but the councils are adding to that, so it's currently up to about 250 million. Every Greater Manchester combined authority, if you listen to it, I'm not sure that many of you will do because it's a bit boring maybe, but if you did, every month I'm saying, right, here's a new scheme for Chorlton. On Friday I passed one for Wigan. We are, and Bury got a whole load on Friday. We are constantly building chunks of the B Network, and no other city region in the country is doing that. No one is back cycling and walking like we have. And that is a massive investment, I would say, in a cleaner, greener Greater Manchester. So there are other examples I could give to you, but that is a tangible one that I can point to as a decision I took. I was given money from the government. I had to choose to prioritise. I could have built a road. I could have built I don't know, another tram stop, or I could have done a whole range of things with it. But I decided to put all of the money into cycling and walking. And everyone at the time said, "What are you doing that for? You know, no one's going to." But I think it was the right decision, because that infrastructure is part of a green city region in the future.
Thank you very much, Gulliver and Dylan, for your questions, and thank you, Andy, for responses. Personally, as someone who turned 18 during a pandemic, it's nice to talk to politicians who actually care about young people who are aging out into voting age, and then they suddenly realise that young people are valuable all along because they are the next generation. Over to Mira.
Well, I was worried about the R-Pass 16 to 18-year-olds. Why? Somebody said to me, "Why you can put all your money in?" But that, sorry, just to say this very quickly, Mira, that's the politicians sometimes have not given support for young people on the basis that they can't vote. And that is what's wrong with politics in many ways, because it's the right thing for the country and for society to support the next generation. But some politicians take such a crude view of it. Oh, well, they can't vote, so don't. And that's what's wrong with that's one of the things that's wrong with British politics. There's more that's wrong with British politics, but that's one. But anyway, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now. Sorry, Mira.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to say a big thank you on behalf of everybody here. And we do have a few final questions just to wrap up. But before that, we just wanted to remind you that young people are not only the future of Greater Manchester, but this is our city, it's our community, and we're here and we're the leaders of tomorrow. So the first question is, could you just sum up everything that you feel is most valuable for young people to take away from this? And what's in it for a young person to support you as mayor?
Well, I think it's brilliant that you are kind of on this call tonight and are challenging me and the other. I know you've met the other candidates as well. That's fantastic. This is your future, your city region. I think the devolution of power out of Westminster gives us the chance to have this kind of conversation and for you to have your voice heard in a way that's hard to get your voice heard in the old way of doing things. I think you are making an impact, as I said before. I think there are changes I can point to, that the Youth Combined Authority, care leavers I've spoken to. So I want you to take away from this call tonight that you can change things. It's not, that life is being done to you. The more you get involved, the more you can make your voice heard. And it is possible to make change for the better happen. I gave the example of Olivia before, but Bethan's done things on the Youth Combined Authority that have kind of changed things. So, it's early days, and in some ways we're building devolution in Greater Manchester, but for me, it's got to be about being a young city region. That's the whole point. You are the future of Greater Manchester. And if we empower you, we'll be empowering our city region to succeed. So, that's the way I see it. And I actually relate everything I've said tonight to my own experience growing up here. Things that I felt were injustices in my time, that I didn't have support with the buses and we didn't have job opportunities because my parents weren't connected. I am trying to put those things in place so that we kind of throw the doors of this city region open to you. So to summarize, I believe I've been a mayor for young people. I've given young people a seat at the table. I've given you a way to get in the door and to get around the city region. And I will continue to do that, picking up some of the new challenges that people have said tonight around mental health, around job opportunities and improving those. So I've been a mayor for young people. I will continue to be a mayor of young people. We have the most diverse, talented young people anywhere in the country. And the more I can open the door to you, the more I can bring your voice to the fore, the stronger we will be, the more successful we will be as Greater Manchester. So I have massive faith in you. I actually believe my generation of politicians has kind of messed things up for you with not going fast enough on climate change, Brexit, and we won't get into all of that now, but you know what I mean. And I have a lot of faith. I think you're growing up with different values. You're all showing it tonight by, with your pronouns, you have a belief. There's no, people aren't conscious of difference between each other in the way they were when we were growing up in the 70s and 80s. I think the values that you have as a younger generation, your belief that we need to act on climate change, I've got massive faith in you as a generation, and I'm here to empower you to make change for the better happen. And as mayor, I will continue to do that.
So thank you so much. That was great to hear. And just to lead on from that, obviously being involved shouldn't be a privilege and it should be a right for all young people. So in your case, if you're re-elected as mayor, will you commit to coming back to speaking to us 2 months after the election?
I would be honoured, and it would be a pleasure to do that. So 100%. I mean, I will come as often as you want me to come out. You know, I hope Bethan would say that if the Youth Combined Authority asks to see me, I will make time to see them. So it's not lip service. I believe it. You know, I've talked about that survey tonight that we do. I do that because I want to know what you think, because I want to get these things right. So yeah, it's not a kind of, oh, do I have to commit to something? I would welcome the chance to keep this conversation going.
Thank you so much. So we're just going to wrap up and let you all know what's going to be happening next. So we're going to be compiling the results of what you said, and we're going to be reporting back to our wider groups of young people before the election. So we wish you good luck, and we hope that all the candidates are going to promise to involve young people going forward. So I think that's us, and we'll end the meeting now. Thank you so much for coming.
Great. Sorry for speaking too long, and you were right to be a firm chair.
I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Did it very well.
We knew that you would be the candidate that would end up overrunning.
Oh, yeah, always speaking too much. But anyway, thanks everybody. Fantastic questions this evening. And yeah, keep involved, because whichever way you're coming from politically, I think, you know, we're beginning to demonstrate that young people can be agents of change. So, and you're showing that. So stay involved and, you know, keep building devolution in Greater Manchester. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you.